You having memory problems? It's okay if you are. You did get knocked in the head pretty hard. And you are on a lot of drugs. What are you doing? That isn't weird at all.
Anger issues, that one.
Headshot! Rampage! Engine of destruction!
Stupid virus.
Seriously, you need to get a grip.
Thank you for your interest in the Georgia Game Developers Association's Patreon campaign. The Georgia Game Developers Association is a nonprofit that focuses on educating both game developers and fans on what is involved in making great games. For years we have put on live events to do just that, attracting some of the greatest thinkers in game development to share their secrets. Recently, we began our live streaming channel on Mixer to expand our ability to reach those developers and gamers far beyond our state. We have seen some initial success, but we are also hearing a lot of requests for more. More workshops, more in-depth interviews, more first looks at indie games, more giveaways, and more great streams. Your support will allow us to do just that. Even at starting levels, we both recognize your support and seek your input on what to stream. At higher levels, you can actually help shape our content, gaining priority access to our speakers, the chance to share announcements, and, at the highest level, running ads and promotions for all our viewers to see. So join now to get the inside scoop on game development and to help shape one of the best game dev channels on the net.
Good evening and welcome to the March GGDA meeting. Yeah. Nice showing here at the Geneva offices in downtown Sandy Springs, away from the craziness of 285 and in the comfort of pizza and cupcakes, the most important part of the meeting. First thing we do every night is thank our Patreons for their support. Patreon is what funds our ability to go ahead and do the live streams. Usually we have a Discord channel for our Patreons, but most of them are here. So thanks to Stephen Coffey, who's not here, Burton Posey, who is, Lee Friedman, who told me he'd be here, James Simpson, who sadly cannot be here, Trey Carpenter, and Puzzles by Joe, who is, of course, here as well. You can support our Patreon at patreon.com/GeorgiaGameDevs. In fact, we are Georgia Game Devs almost everywhere, so you can find us there on YouTube, on Mixer, and on Twitch that way. And you can join us on Twitter at ggda_org, and of course we have the Facebook group as well. We've got a number of upcoming events I want to talk about, a lot of really good things happening. If you are a streamer, by the way, do contact us at info@ggda.org. If you're interested in streaming Georgia games or things about game development, we are setting up a bigger network of streamers, and especially if you want to stream good poker stuff, which I'm excited about. Our next meeting is the second Tuesday in April. I believe that's April 10th. At the Farm, the new incubator at the Braves Stadium, right by our Siege Hotel. A company called Fanboard is going to show us how to do create AR games. They do AR games for the Braves and for other groups as well. So check it out for a look at a new incubator space and for a good in-depth look at AR development. How they are augmenting reality right. The Athens chapter will be having the Athens Game Jam right after that, April 13th to 15th. So if you want to make games for the weekend, head on down there. We have info on both of those at ggda.org, our main website. There are a number of special shout-outs to do to people in the organizations. One, we're going to congratulate Puzzle Stride Joe for having an entire game category named after his game. You can now find the Clutter games on Big Fish, right? A whole category.
Not on Big Fish itself, but in their desktop application that lets you launch this game. There's a place that says more genres you might like.
I'm not satisfied until you're a Congregate tag. Until I can go into Congregate and type Clutter and get 50 games that aren't you and one of you.
You need to mention Robert, too.
That is my very next one.
Good.
Congrats! I was hoping you'd be here so I could embarrass him in public, but oh well. Hope you're watching, Robert. Congratulations to Robert Waller for 4th place in Twitter. I'm sorry, not Twitter. I got it from Twitter. 4th place in Congregate's month development contest for Sinker. So well done. I mean, I don't even guess how many games they have up on Congregate every month. Well done. Well done. And I am going to go ahead and push my own Kickstarter since Noble Armada is underway, and I'm really amused because one of the main people here at Keneva actually worked on a version of Noble Armada over a decade ago with me. So good to finally have a version of the Noble Armada game coming out. So we are kickstarting the Noble Armada real-time strategy game. Check it out on Kickstarter. Just look for Noble Armada. And before I introduce our speaker, I would actually like to introduce Zane Everett from the IGDA Atlanta chapter, one of the board members, to talk about what they have coming up.
All right. So on April 8th, the IGDA Atlanta is planning on having a mixer where we are getting together members of American Marketing Association from Atlanta, the different universities, the advertising group from SCAD, as well as different streamers and the press like GameSkinny to come down and check out games that are made in Georgia at VRX at 2 p.m. Excuse me, at 2 p.m.
What date again?
April 8th.
Tuesday?
That is a
Sunday.
Sunday.
That's a Sunday.
That is a Sunday. We just put the information up on the Facebook IGDA page. You can check that out. Look at the link to the event right there.
Excellent. Thank you, Zane. Much appreciated. So yeah, that'll be Sunday, April 8th. So we'll try and post up information about it as well. We have launched the call for speakers for Siege 2018. Siege will be October 4th to 7th. If you are interested in speaking at Siege, please go fill it out. We have the link up right now in the Facebook group. We'll also have it up on the GGDA webpage tomorrow and probably up on the Siege site as well shortly thereafter. So it's a lot of fun to do this one from Keneva again. We haven't done a meeting at Keneva in a number of years. And Keneva is actually one of the most long-standing game dev studios in Georgia. And Chris Klaus, the head guy here, is also chair of the GGDA. So despite that, we haven't had enough time here. And they're doing all kinds of fun work and always have been doing fun work. So try not to stare at the folks who are showing up late. Ginger. I don't know if you all had any announcements you wanted to make tonight. Do you have any events coming up you wanted to announce?
Well, we have the ASIFA International Animation Society Mixer every last Wednesday of the month. This time we have someone, Peter Hickson from EGC. He does visual effects and animation coming out to talk. And it's always free at Land of 1,000 Hill. So you can find that online too if you just type in ASIFA stuff.
So all of you artists, we got a bunch of artists here tonight. ASIFA is a great organization for anyone interested in animation, really for any level of art. So talk to Ginger, talk about that as well. So anyway, Keneva's been here for a number of years, doing very interesting work, a lot of innovative tech through the year. And now they're moving into VR with a whole new platform, a whole new setup that I'm pretty interested in personally, for my own poker playing reasons, not just for the game design side of things. So it's my pleasure tonight to introduce our speaker, Tim Ryan, who is Director of Development at Keneva, but he's been involved in our classic game universe for a long time. Worked on a game called Mech Commander with one of my old publishers, Microprose. Worked on what is still probably the best Games for Health project ever, called Remission. Very few people have it on their resume that my games keep children alive. And his are scientifically proven to keep children alive. So really impressive titles here. Worked with Sony Been here with AGS and Cadillac Jackery as a producer. And as I mentioned, and do you have any announcements? Everyone's with announcements is showing up late tonight. No Indie Cluster announcements?
Yeah.
You're on mic right now, Ron. Ron Jones with Indie Cluster. That's what you get for showing up late, Ron.
Right.
Put you on the spot.
Okay. So, right off the top of my head, I think I would love to announce our first donor party for the Indie Cluster. Don't really know how exactly I'm going to structure it, but as of right now, it's a nice little kind of a gala, almost, if you will, for indies. A little spotlight, because we've been doing this for about 3.5 years now. So I kind of wanted to do something special for everybody. So, and just a nice little event, people can throw money at us. So
I like those events.
I just grabbed the date, April 24th. So you guys put that on the calendar, and yeah, it should be fun.
All right, Indie Cluster, Ron Jones, April 24th. Party. We can throw money at me. I mean at him. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Tim Ryan, Director of Development here at Geneva.
Thanks, Andrew. Welcome to our workspace. You're sitting in the middle of it. Apologize, computers everywhere. This is how we work. And if you're not making video games, this is what you're in for. At any rate, it's been an exciting time here at Geneva. This last year, we launched a brand new title, Casino Life, with poker being our first casino game. And I joined us about 2 years ago, and we were switching from something you guys might have played called World of Geneva. It was a Windows-based sort of social sandbox game. And we decided to pivot from that, and I'll go into a little more detail. I have a deck prepared, but before I get into my deck, I have a little bit of news I wanted to get out of the way. One, probably most importantly, we are hiring. So we are hiring a Unity engineer. We are hiring a UX, UI graphic designer, and we are hiring a game tester. So all the job descriptions are on our website, Geneva.com. Please submit your resume and your portfolios if you're interested. Another bit of news, and I didn't put this in the deck because I wasn't sure it was going to happen, but evidently, as of today, we have just minted our first 100 billion cryptocurrencies, our Kava coins, just launched today on the Stellar Network. At any rate, now, on with the show. So, as I mentioned, we took down the old game platform, and for those of you who did play it, and you guys have maybe kept with Geneva for a lot of years, I kind of want to explain that a little bit. The engine was really dated. It was a Windows engine, had old graphics capabilities, and it's free to play. And that model really just sort of shifted over to mobile. And we just saw our user numbers really start to trickle down. And we realized that we needed to put our game on a new engine. So we started looking at Unity. And then we started taking a close look at our design. Our design was this really aggressive, huge scope sandbox game. And we didn't really want to take 3 years rebuilding that whole thing. So we decided to start small and sort of dip our toe in the water and get some experience on this new engine. So the other thing I wanted to mention, that focus ended up shifting away from a sandbox game to more of a more profitable genre, which is the online social casinos. Just weird phenomena. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but a few years ago they figured out that people were willing to pay real money to buy play money and gamble and lose and win play money. It's just a freaky thing, but for some reason that business model just works. So we're kind of moving into that space, but being Geneva, of course, we're not going to do it the same way. We do want a social environment, so we have real avatars in our game, 3D avatars that you can customize. And we're going to keep a UGC element. We do have plans for people to design their own clothing and for designing their own poker rooms and other casino games and environments. But we're going to be building it piecemeal. So with that, let me go on to the next slide. So what we launched, you see a picture here. is Casino Life Poker. And the whole team had to basically transition over to Unity. So some people had Unity experience, some people didn't. So that was a big change for us. And our focus changed from being sort of a platform company where we were enabling, amateur game designers to being a kind of a game studio. So our staff had to change. We had to hire some artists, and it's been a great thing, actually working closely on content instead of relying on user-generated content. And this last year we shipped our first mobile and multi-platform game. It was released on Facebook and WebGL and on Android and iOS, both tablets and phones. It's actually doing pretty well. Our retention's pretty good. It's about a little over 40% on an average day. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but the more retention you have of people coming back the next day, the more likely your game's going to be successful. We've been averaging a little over 10,000, I think. I don't know if I'm right there, Jason, but monthly active users. So we are getting a lot of traffic. And what's important, because this is a multiplayer game, you have to have a population. So we are doing a certain amount of advertising just to bring a steady stream of people in, so have people playing. And we try to improve our games. So with those people coming in, we have enough people to kind of experiment and test out new ideas as we evolve and iterate on our product. So let me talk to you a little bit about that. So this is something I learned when I first came here. I didn't know anything about this, but evidently web companies have been doing this for years. They figured out that they can do this thing called split testing or A/B testing, where they can have features turned on and off depending on whether you're assigned to a certain user group or not, right? So you may see a feature, another person may see a feature slightly different, and then they see which one improves retention more, right? Which one maybe improves revenue a little bit more, right? And then we choose a winner. And so we use technologies like Delta DNA, Redshift, and Tableau to generate reports, and we run those reports every day, and we meet once a week, and we make decisions on who's a winner and who's a loser when we experiment with these game designs. And we also practice Agile, which is a Scrum development, and we do 2 to 3 sprints of 2 weeks each of development, followed by one hardening sprint. So we're releasing every 5 to 8 weeks another version with new features for people to play and for us to run some of our experiments. So a lot of you engineers in the office are probably wondering kind of what technology we're using. So I figured I'd list them out here. Take a picture if you want. We're using these all actively. These are all third-party plugins. And let me talk a little bit about VR. So we haven't released this publicly yet, and mostly because we haven't seen VR get a lot of traction yet. It seems to be a lot of hype right now. And for multiplayer, you really have to have a very successful platform just because you need other players to play poker with, right? We don't have any bots, right? It's not a single-player video poker game. You have to play with other live players, right? So for us, you have to have a certain amount of liquidity in population, right? So one of the challenges that we had with VR is like, well, there's just not going to be enough VR players, right, to find. So we thought what we should do is do fully cross-platform development simultaneously with VR so that we can make sure that players who are playing VR can play people who are on their Android device or on their iOS device or on their browser. And so in order to make that happen, we had to be fully cross-platform and continuously developing VR while we were working on our mobile and WebGL targeted games. So the con of that was like, well, why do that, right? Like mobile is like 80% of your installs, right? And VR is not really viable. And it divides our focus, and the changes that you do often break the other platforms. You have to constantly test it at different platforms, make sure you didn't break anything. And the art is often limited to whatever the least powerful platform is, right? When you do that. And so those are some cons. But again, for us, because we needed that liquidity. We needed people who were playing at the same time to find each other. We felt it was essential that we be cross-platform. And the main pro of that is also becoming less of a porting effort later, right? We didn't want to, when we're done, do a big porting effort and then be like, a year or 2 years later of effort just trying to make it work, right? If we're constantly trying to figure out how to make it work in VR as we go, it's a lot less painful later. And honestly, we know that VR is the future. We're not going to shy from that. We have to keep our foot in there. And the VR also demos really well. And really, the art content works, for all platforms as we produce it. So, at any rate. So some of the challenges that we faced is that the perspective changed from third person to first person sitting at the table, right? So in a mobile game, I don't know if you played Zynga, World Series of Poker, or one of these games, you have this sort of third person above the table view, and if I go back a couple of slides, you can see what that perspective looks like. That's typical, although they'll have Facebook icons instead of avatars at the table, right? But when you're in first person, the expectation is I'm sitting at the table, right? Well, how do you make that work? So the player interaction method changed, right? You're different controllers. It's not really a quick point and click with the mouse. It's not a quick tap of your finger. There's no gestures, right? So and then the visual presentation is really completely different when you're sitting at that camera. And VR players tend to play at a slower speed than mobile players. And part of this is they're more immersed, and part of it really is because of the controls, people kind of getting used to things. And largely because a lot of things, because you're immersed in it, you don't have this sort of top-down perspective looking over everything. You have to look, interact at things, right? So you have this gaze pointer. I want to interact with that person. I want to interact with the dealer, right? So when you do that, it kind of slows the interaction down a little bit. So that was another challenge we faced. And then also asset bugs. They can be very visible in VR, but they're not visible in mobile and WebGL. Let me give you an example. It's pretty funny. So VR was still lagging a little bit behind before we had our first playable demo. And we had our avatars playing animation. And by the way, for the first few months, they were completely naked. We didn't have any clothing because we hadn't hired any artists. And so we had like naked avatars, which was really great when the, what was it, Jason? The children's Jewish fun or school came by and they saw all these naked avatars. They had something to tell their parents. But at any rate, what was really interesting is that we didn't realize until we sat at the table and looked over that everyone's hands were hovering about 4 inches over the table, right? You couldn't tell. The programmer had kind of positioned them wrong, and from the perspective of up above, you couldn't tell that that was a problem. You had no idea, right? So, the hands aren't even touching the table. Okay, that's a problem. So, indeed, when you have a first-person perspective and you're able to look to the side, you're getting a kind of a close-up view of these avatars, and you're able to see them at angles that the player can control, right? There's no camera control in our mobile game, but there is a camera control for our VR game. And the other thing we noticed is that players who play on multiple platforms kind of have expectations of parity, right? They expect their avatars in this platform to look like the avatars on another platform, right? And that's just a conceit. And it's kind of funny because it's probably, 1% of our players will play on both their PC and on their iPhone, but there's going to be some players and there'll be that expectation. And I want to tell you about our first VR experiment gone wrong, right? Our very first prototype. And we were in a hurry to get it out. We were demoing. We were talking to, casinos out there about maybe doing some work with them. And we wanted to get this prototype done so we could take it on the road. And so it was done in pretty much a hurry with not a lot of planning. And it used a custom gaze pointer UI. It's sort of like you hovered, and after a few seconds it realized this is what your intended action was. It didn't involve clicking. And the theory was that the VR devices may have different controllers, right? Because there were all these different VR devices. There was no standard control scheme yet. And they thought, well, all of them are going to have a gaze pointer, right? So we'll not worry about the controller. Everything will just be, a gaze triggered. And the problem with that was a very non-standard way of interaction. And even the goggles-only devices had a touchpad of sort, right? There's usually a touchpad on the side. Hit me on my Oculus. And also, Uni came with its own gaze click library, and we figured if this is, a standard platform and everyone else is using it, all the other games are going to work this way. Why change it, right? It's going to be, people are going to understand how to use it right away. Why be different? And then we also realized that UI panels that work for mobile and WebGL did not work in the immersive 3D UI. Partially because to make things visible and readable on a small mobile screen, everything has to be bigger, right? Using those same panels, UI panels on a VR screen, it's like, why is that button so huge? Well, because it has to be the size of a thumb on the mobile device, but on a PC or a desktop or on VR, it's like a quarter of your screen. Damn, it's big. So we realized that none of this stuff really works, and we had to do custom VR panels that pop up and handle gaze click. And we're still working on proximity triggers. We want to have you, when you're starting to look over it, for things to start to pop up. I can interact with this person or I can interact with the other. Right now, everything is on, but as I said, we're early pre-alpha prototype, and we'll be demoing that in a minute. And our first prototype also attempted to listen to and suppress UI to know what buttons to show, rather than have its own really UI controller. And at the time, that seemed like an easy solution, especially since we were still kind of iterating on the game mechanics and events within the poker room. But unfortunately, every time we iterated on that stuff, it completely broke VR. And while we tried to be concurrent, it actually failed to keep up with mechanics and the changes for the other platforms. So we ended up having to refactor the code to separate out the platform-specific UI from the game mechanics and events and actions. Art. There's certain premises whenever you're designing games, and little considerations for art in any game is that art is designed to the camera, right? You don't design a really expensive, 100,000 poly character that has a bunch of, 1024 textures on it, right? And very high resolution textures on something that's really going to occupy a small part of the screen, right? And on a mobile device, something will translate to maybe, 30 pixels high. Why do I have to put that much detail in that, right? So, art, in order to be optimized for the platform, is designed to that camera and to that screen size, right? Generally speaking. And players expect their avatars to look the same, as I mentioned earlier. And in a 3D environment, no matter what game you're in and what perspective, it needs to be immersive, regardless of your camera, right? So the problems that we had with VR is that players have control of their camera, and they can look up from the table. They can look, and their expectation is that they're going to be in a casino. And we didn't have to render an entire casino when you're playing in that view when you're looking down at the table, and we wouldn't want to, right? It's off screen. Why would you create the art, right? But with VR, there's that expectation. There's got to be walls, there's got to be ceilings, there's got to be light, there's got to be people walking around, there's got to be environmental stuff, right? And they can also see their other avatars up close, right? So how are you going to make those look good, right? And they look good there, and they look the same as they do in the mobile game, right? So there's a number of solutions that we worked on, and we're still iterating on this stuff. We are still being iterated on, but one of the things we did is that we standardized our art style at a resolution that kind of worked for all the platforms, right? So a little bit more forgiving, right? Not completely photorealistic, right? And our avatar tools that we have inside our editor allows our artists to actually view and test the clothing at any camera angle, right? They can trigger the animations and make sure that there's no skinning problems on the clothes, and that if I look down the back of the neck or look from behind, I don't have any visual problems, right? And if I'm looking from the side, it looks good. So that was another important thing we had to do. And you know, even though for our currently shipped platforms, players will never look from the side, we had to anticipate that with VR they will be able to do that at some point. Also, our poker rooms are designed with a floor and table and props for the mobile device. So when you're looking down, it does feel like a casino, right? But then for the walls and additional props are added for VR. We came up with a kind of a good solution where we can actually do a 360 picture and put it in as a skybox. That actually helps performance quite a bit. So you can have a very highly detailed environment that we construct, and then we can take a picture of that and play it back in our game, and it really helps with performance. The other thing we had, inherent challenges. Mobile and WebGL is essentially a flat interface on a single plane, right? For the most part. I mean, you can change the Z a little bit, things on top of the other, but the user is interacting essentially on a 2D event plane, right? And in VR, those triggers, the UI, it's all attached to objects embedded in the 3D space, right? You guys have all seen Fringe, you know how they like to embed the words in the scene, in the environment, right? That's typical with VR, right? They like to see even their labels in the 3D space, right? And the other thing is mobile UI tends to be oversized for smaller screens, really too big for VR. And VR interfaces are tied to the head angle and gaze targets. And that tends to be really slow, right? Because my interaction isn't just a tap or a quick mouse click, right? I actually have to go look for what I'm going to interact with and then decide I'm going to interact with that. So that really slows down the pace of the game, right? And for poker players, they can be really impatient sometimes. That's a real challenge for us. So, and the solutions we came up with is one I mentioned before. We separated our code between the common game mechanics and the UI presentation, right? So we have one set of code deciding what events are happening, communicating those events, and we have platform-specific UI that responds to those events to know what to display. And our VR UI is quick and responsive with default actions that are forgiving, right? So you played enough poker, sometimes you forget to check or whatever. It doesn't fold you out, right? It will check for you. You may have timed out, but it's okay. No one raised, right? And we have a pretty good lengthy turn timer, right? And we standardized to make it maybe a little slower than Zynga and World Series of Poker, but it's much more forgiving for players on the VR side. And eventually they get faster at playing it. It's not necessarily much a problem. But and we also use that curved UI library. It's one of the plugins that I mentioned earlier to make an otherwise sort of flat lobby where you're choosing what poker you want to go in a tournament. Just the main menu. We use that to make it a little bit more immersive. So those are little tricks you can do to still make something really seem VR. And another thing I wanted to mention, one of the challenges, and this is something we found out in early talks with folks at Facebook, and we were talking to the Oculus folks, and we really wanted to be, our goal was to be, when we launch, would be to be featured as a VR game, right? If you want to feature games, few games out there, that's really important. It's free promotion for you, right? And they told us pretty early on that if you're just a straight port of your first-person shooter over, and it really doesn't think you tried to make allowances for VR and make it VR-specific controls and VR-specific actions, that they're not going to feature you, right? They want to see something that's very specific to VR. So that's one of the main reasons why it's like, yeah, okay, we're going to switch from third person to first person. There you go. It's hugely different for us, right? But even then, instead of presenting them with just a flat panel, and sure enough, you could interact with such a flat panel, we decided to curve it, make it more immersive, perspective menu, right? Actually, that's the end of my presentation. I do want to show you the VR demo, and I want to introduce Yanfeng Chen. If you come up, we can do the demo. Yanfeng is our technical director and architect on Casino Life.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring up, make sure that's window.
Oh yeah, I did escape, I think.
Are you running the game now? Yeah, it's there's so this is our Windows build of our Casino Life VR game. So basically, this one currently is built against Oculus targets, and we also have the mobile build, which is for Gear VR. Basically, they use the exact same project with the minor setting differences in there. So the interactions so far, they are pretty similar. And so what happens now is when the game launched to a certain degree, it actually starts showing things inside this VR headset, this Oculus Rift. And what it's doing now is because of power saving, so there's no proximity sensing in here. I have to actually block the sensor so that it knows I'm trying to put it on my face. So this is what this lobby scene look like in VR. So when you first get into the world, you look at this a few selections in front of you, including this quick play. And apparently, at this moment, the only one that works for all pre-alpha release is this quick play here, and there will be additional ones for tournaments and other different additional gameplay options in here. Tim, you want to do the introduction? I'm going to put this headset on.
Sure.
Show the people what's going on here.
Sure. There we go.
So, you want to the top?
Yeah. So we're doing a quick play. Right now this is wired up to take you to sort of a default stakes. And it's currently pointed at our production environment, right? So
yes, it's currently.
Hopefully we've ended up at a table with other players. Yep, there we go. So you can see these are other avatars. You know, that guy's purchased some tattoos, you see. And we have hats and glasses that they can get. And the, you know, everything here on the table is in 3D. And we planned that from the beginning. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with a fixed camera you don't have to do in 3D. We did them in 3D, anticipating VR. So all our chips are in 3D, our cards are in 3D. And the casino environment is a 3D environment, but as I said, we kind of tricked it. I don't think you can tell that that's actually just a skybox wrapped around the table right now.
And the current UI interaction is we use a gaze pointer. I wonder if you guys can see the red dot in the middle of the screen. This gaze pointer, whenever I hover over something, it's interactable. I press my button, it triggers the interaction.
So this is a pre-alpha version. Hasn't been polished yet. We're still working on the lighting, and we're still working on the locations of things to make them more convenient, not cause as much neck strain, and to try to speed up play a little bit.
Is the Texas Hold'em the only thing you're doing right now?
It's the only thing we're doing now. We do have plans to do other casino games. Probably doing a blackjack game, slots. You know, slots are probably the most popular social casino, so we'll get our feet wet in that soon. Go ahead.
And how many cards
Oops,
What was that?
Cards Against Humanity on the table?
No.
You guys had any issues with motion sickness? You're having to move your head back and forth all the time.
No, we're looking for testers for that, though. We'll supply a vomit bag. Actually, you know, that if you ever get into VR development, the most important thing is frame rate, really. number one reason people get nauseous is, one, they don't have control of their motion, where they're moving, and two, their frame rate isn't stellar. So you really want a solid frame rate. The higher the frame rate, the better.
Another suggestion I give is having a setting for IPD within your game. If you're using two different cameras to render the view, fixing someone's interocular pupillary distance is going to help reduce motion sickness.
Yeah. So we're also we're looking at a couple other options that allow us to set sort of a focal point in front. But if we're actually going to move into a question phase, I wanted to introduce you to Robert Dixon. He's our UX designer. And if you have any questions related to art and UI design, really VR has been his baby. What time he was able to spare on that, which was maybe 10% of your time.
If that.
So when it comes to design questions on VR, really direct them at him. Yan Feng, any kind of technical questions, and me, producer, and business questions. So, any other questions?
We have a question online. Do you plan to do cross-develop for web/desktop as well?
Yeah, so we are currently live on Facebook, playable in your browser. Just look for us, Casino Life. That's a WebGL game.
Talk about how they're already regular. So. And how much did you say you harvested in crypto so far?
We didn't harvest. We minted 100 billion, right, Wiley? Right. Yeah. So that is kind of a new thing for us, and it's not a way for raising money. It's a utility token, and we're going to be using it as a reward system for people to help promote our game. It's sort of a viral incentive, right? And we'll come up with ways that people can spend that in game. But it is going to be out there. It is out there on Stellar, so people would potentially be able to cash out. And we will be awarding that. It's not in this current iteration of the game, but it is something that we're working towards. The first step was really minting our coins and putting them on Stellar, and in the next couple of releases, we're going to be offering Kava coins, that's what we're calling them, as rewards for playing our game and inviting your friends.
Bitcoin in the title of the company.
Speak up a little louder. I'll start bringing around a microphone.
Okay, what was that? I'll repeat the question.
I said, are you going to put Bitcoin in the name of the company? Because suppose that triples your stock.
Yeah, no, the question is, are we going to put Bitcoin in the name of the company? No. We may rebrand our product a little bit. I think we're cutting out a couple of letters and calling ourselves Kava going forward. But everyone else can still call us Kaniva. We don't
mind. So with platforms you talked about, are you guys planning on doing any HTC Vive or Oculus as well, or with actual controller movement and movements that you can pick up the cards, anything like that?
Not right now. If you look at the install base for VR right now, Samsung Gear has over 5 million devices out there, whereas Oculus and Vive are barely 200,000. So right now we're going for the mobile VR, especially Oculus is releasing Oculus Go, which will use the same build platform as the Samsung Gear. So we're focusing mainly on the mobile VR.
I guess another question is, so what's the social aspects of this? Are you able to at any point walk around in the lobby with people kind of in the lobby with you and then pick your game? I guess maybe I'm thinking of VR chat where people kind of walk around and they do whatever in their corner. I thought that'd be kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, that's blue sky stuff. We do want to get there. At the moment, your feet are fixed to the floor. You are standing in our game lobby by yourself, and you are sitting at the table with your friends, and you can chat with them. We do have a chat interface. You can chat with them, and that may be something we're going to do. We actually, we still really do love that sort of social game that that background that we have, and we do want to get back there. But we want to make a solid game that's profitable first, and then start adding in those more social features as we go. We have a pretty aggressive roadmap this year, which is really primarily focused on getting that core poker experience really good, improving our metagame, to get people coming back every day, every week, right? And we get that retention up, start adding some more features, and that will help fund even more features. And we do plan, as I said, at some point, allowing people to maybe upload their own clothing skins, right? Maybe design their own poker room or make changes to her poker room, right? So those are ideas that we have that are blue sky, that are very Kniva, and I do see a lot of potential for that. That's been on the roadmap for a while. It's just that we didn't want to wait 3 years to ship a game. We decided, let's ship that core poker game, let's try the other game types, let's slowly add more social features, and then at some point, yes, we would like you to be wandering around the lobby, maybe even add a dance floor. That keeps coming up. I don't know why. Dance floors are really popular. But problem is with dance floors is that they're now gambling. Yeah. And we make our money on chip sync. So I don't know. Maybe we have to pay for dances. I don't know. We'll have to figure that one
out. You kind of stole my question I was going to ask earlier. I remember back when Kniva was born Kniva, you could add your own stuff into it. I was going to ask if you are planning on doing something similar with Casino Life, where you could, like as you were mentioning, create your own clothing line, or like possibly you introduce your own like cards into the game, like card patterns on the back. If that was something.
Yeah. So we do every system we design it with the anticipation that we may at some point allow a user to customize it. Doing it right is important to us. One of the problems we ran into was the quality control at World of Kniva, right? And first impressions mean a lot for new players. And if the first thing they see is some new user content who's managed to promote their world really high up, but it looks like crap, it's not a good first impression. So we're going to be looking at our UGC pipeline very carefully to figure out how we can do quality control, how we can maybe do some rating systems, try to make sure we're promoting the right assets. And as far as rewards go and incentives, we just launched our utility token, right? And that will be one way that players might be able to earn some money or earn some crypto by designing some clothing, right? So we're definitely working that way, but we have building blocks, right? So building these pieces, and eventually we'll get there again.
Okay.
So in classic online poker, you don't have as many ways to mess with your opponent's head as you do in real face-to-face poker. At least so many ways to get the other player tilted. So what are you able to add in VR that you can't really do in classic online poker?
You go ahead. Yeah. So one thing we're doing is we have an emote system like everyone else does where you have text emotes, but we're going to tie animations to those emotes. And then we're actually going to have emotes that don't have any text tied to them at all. So for theoretically, if you're trying to bluff, I think you have a good hand, we will have an emote that pretty much communicates like you're happy. You're very happy at your hand. And so that'll be one way where you'll be able to get some more of that personal interaction.
Is that already implemented?
It's coming up soon.
It's coming up soon. Yeah. We are working with a contract animator, and we're getting some great animations in. This next release, you'll see a lot more variety of animations in our avatars, and gender-specific animations. Everyone has this sort of same animation now. We realize that doesn't look too good when the ladies' legs are kind of wide open. Oh, shoot, how are we going to fix that? Especially in VR. Man, got to fix that. So we now have very ladylike poses, and that's coming in our next release.
You will have a table flip animation.
Yeah.
So I want to ask a clarification on one of the other questions about like the VR platforms. You just showed it to us on a Rift. Is that just because it's easier to show it on a Rift? Is it coming out for the PC Rift when it does come out later this year, or is it just your VR?
There's going to be nothing preventing it from coming out, but the quality won't be the same as other Rift apps. Actually, the reason we're showing you to you on a Rift is because of the dev environment. Unity has a really good integration with the Rift, and so, for example, when I was creating the UI for the VR, I could actually run it in Editor, put the headset on, look around, tweak it real time, and see exactly what's going on, rather than having to go back and forth, do a build, everything else like that. So
yeah, this is another important lesson we learned. Even though you're targeting mobile VR, like this one, single project, once it's set up properly, you can build both mobile and PC desktop ones. But while you are developing, editor, you really want to have Oculus right here, so that you don't have to, every time you make a video, to wait for 20, 30 minutes for the Android APK to be generated and upload it to the device and pop it in. That's another 30, just half an hour already passed. So right here, you make a modification in the code in Unity. You run it. It's right here on your Oculus Rift. That's valuable.
So it's for development purposes, but not necessarily coming out on the Rift.
Not really. So in this case, Rift allows us to do a simulcast right on the screen. On this mobile device, unfortunately, I can describe it to you. That wouldn't be a very good experience for you guys. So,
and largely from a business perspective, we're trying to figure out who the winner is going to be, right? So, I mean, PlayStation VR is looking kind of good right now. We'd be kind of behind the ball on that one, but we were kind of betting on Gear VR for a while, and that still might be it.
Well, mobile VR.
And mobile, yeah. So, we'll figure it out. Our plan still this year is to release at least a very basic playable, minimum playable VR game that is playing all the same players that are on mobile or on Facebook WebGL. So.
I was wondering what the main demographic of your player base so far is, and how do you design like the UX and the gameplay around that?
Well, I don't know if we have stats.
I don't know. I don't have the stats with me. I don't know. Is Jason still here?
No, he's not.
All right. But we have a product marketing guy who crunches those numbers all the time. But generally speaking, our game is most widely played on Android devices right now, and it really is about even boys to girls, and it is a younger audience. People who play smartphone games tend to be younger than the average casino patron. So I came out of real money casino games, and I worked at Cadillac ADGS, and the median player was a 51-year-old grandma, right? And that was great because I was getting kind of old. I'm getting closer to that target demographic, and I kind of stopped making shooters. What am I going to do? But it's not the same demographic for mobile, and it does tend to be more even split on gender, and it tends to skew younger in the 20s and 30s.
When we first started designing it, we were actually looking at some different data that was coming out on age and gender of social gamers, casual social games. And they tended to be a little bit older, and actually skewed a little bit female. And so when we first started talking about the design direction, I wanted to try and create a product that's a little bit more elegant than other things you see out there. It's not as macho, and it's something that you would feel like James Bond playing, for example, right? We wanted something that someone could come in and they could feel special playing. There's other competitors out there. I'm not going to name their names. I have avatar-based poker as well, but it's a lot more cartoony, and it's definitely geared for a younger audience. And I wanted to create something that would appeal more for an older, more sophisticated audience.
On the dev side, what made you decide to go with an agile sprint methodology?
Well, it was here when I got here, and I think for good reasons. I had something called Pivot Tuesdays when I got here. This was basically, you're assigned work starting on Monday, but don't bother working on it because Tuesday it's going to change, right? And I think switching, as Manas switched us, I think over to Agile.
Before Manas.
Oh, even before Manas. So I don't know, a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it switched to Agile, and at least you have in theory, a 2-week sprint where I pretty much know what I'm going to work on. It's not going to change on me. And believe me, they try changing stuff, and I'm like defending my sprint. You will not break my sprint! It's got to wait! You don't even have to design! What are you talking about? But Agile is really good for rapid iteration. The way we're doing things, we're trying out new features, right? Waterfall approach, you can do that for a roadmap, but how well did we stick to that original schedule? That's really hard to predict, especially for us because it was a new genre for the team. We never did a poker game before, I mean, the rules of poker are pretty straightforward, but, there's some complexities we never encountered before. Most of us are pretty new to the Unity engine, so our predictions for, a waterfall schedule would not have worked, really. So we did have to scope a lot. We still had a very aggressive plan and feature set just for a poker game, and in order to hit our soft launch in August, we had to kind of trim it down to more of a minimum viable product or an MVP approach to poker. So right now, that includes, well, at the time, it didn't include customized avatars, right? They were pre-assigned to you. You just choose, well, you could choose one, right? But that was it. No customization, and you could play cash games. And we had a very, simple tournament system, and not enough players to actually fill the tournament table. And then we started adding more features from that. So in December, we added customized avatars, and we saw our retention numbers pick up, and we saw our revenue pick up. People were willing to, spend $1.99 for, a tattoo or some sunglasses, whatever. They want to show off at the table, And here's the thing, when you have an avatar system in a game, I would encourage you to always do this. You gotta tie some of your microtransactions to customizations of your avatar, because players that's their presence. They want to show off, and that's what they're going to be willing to spend money on. So, we'll be continuing to make some new clothing improvement. People run out of stuff, we'll make some new clothing because it's generating revenue for us. We have to keep supporting that.
And we've also found that through the data, the people that tend to go to the shop and actually buy an item of clothing are more retained than players who don't. So it's really good for retention as well.
They're vested in their character. They spent money. Of course, I want to stay playing it, right?
Yep.
So that's the lesson learned, on World of Kniva and any of those MMO games, is players get invested in their character. There's not just that avatar for a night, right? They're that avatar for a while because they're able to customize it, become that avatar, or able to role play a character. I'm sure a bunch of the females in our game are actually males. You guys are probably aware of this. But
you mentioned MMOs. Do you have plans to go back into the MMO world?
No. We are still massive in terms of number of players, and our focus, our goal is to support a large number of players. Our back-end servers are designed to scale up to support, thousands and thousands of concurrent players, right? We're keeping it small right now, just enough marketing money going in here just to draw in enough players so we can test our ideas and refine our game and improve our retention. Right? Otherwise, you're kind of just throwing marketing money away if we can't get our retention up to a sort of stable level.
You mentioned briefly Skybox. Is that just a cube right now?
Yeah, so...
my follow-up question
I'm
is,
sorry.
if it is, how does that appear? Doesn't that kind of feel very flat in here?
So, two things. One, Oculus has a really great set of tools for Unity. One of the tools that they allow you to do is they allow you to set up the Oculus camera rig in a scene and then create a skybox from the geometry in that scene. So it's very easy to make a skybox of whatever you see around you. Your second point is can you tell? It really depends on how big of a space you're talking about. When you're talking about a small space that doesn't have a lot of parallax, that is things moving further away or slower, without that sense of parallax, you really can't tell that it's a skybox versus.
Well, plus, our camera isn't moving. Your feet are glued to the floor. If you were able to move around a lot, this would not work for a shooter. This would not work for a shooter.
Well, it actually with the mobile VR, it's only. Yeah.
Right now, it's just
it's not
standing or sitting on it. There's no home track.
Right.
Yeah. Question.
So you said you were looking for a UI UX designer. That's is that in addition to? Are you looking for somebody that specializes in VR? Like.
That's a plus for us, really.
Let's say if you look for somebody that has that experience.
That's a huge plus for us if we can get it. We're looking for someone who's a good graphic designer.
Yeah, good designer all around.
Good designer all around, can draw well. If they bring some additional, skill sets, that's great because we're a small team, right?
It's me and one other person.
Yeah, and when you're a small team, you got to wear a lot of hats. So we like to have a diverse skill set here. I mean, if you can you animate too? You're hired. Really, we're really looking for a diverse skill set and someone who would be a good complement for our existing artists.
And generalists are the best.
This might be a silly question because you talked about the slot machines, but are you planning on doing like a win box system where they win items instead of money? Like they pay for it to win items or something like that?
So we we have kind of a loot box-like presentation right now that was just released was one of our experiments actually, and it won. It won the retention, but it didn't win the revenue one, right? So we combined two experiments, and when you unlock new clothing, when you level up, it's presented to you like unlocking a box, right? But as far as a lockbox feature, we're definitely looking at it. There's a lot of controversy now around that. And there's a lot of positives to having a lockbox, like a timed lockbox to get you playing, another session later that day. Because, hey, back in my mind, I remember unlocking that, and it's got a 4-hour timer on it and come back 4 hours, right? There's definitely some real good things to take from that, but we want to tread really carefully. The app stores are really looking closely at that. Some states are looking at doing some legislation related to that. And we don't want to run afoul of any changes like that. And we're kind of late to the party on that, so we have the benefit of hindsight to see, the right way to do it. We could probably do it real quick, but we haven't made an active decision on that, I don't think, just yet. So I think it was one of our ideas, certainly, but it's not in the current product.
So the casinos like MGM often see digital casino games as a way to get people on the casino floor who would try to gain comfort level where they actually go play on the floor. Do you see that there's a different reaction from casual or new players compared to experienced players and pros?
I really don't know if there are any pro poker players who play for real money who play our app. It's entirely possible, but I don't know, and I haven't had any feedback from any. I can tell you this, that when it comes to social casinos, there's not necessarily a huge amount of crossover between the real money players. I mean, there might be some. And originally that was the intent. When IGT bought Double Down, 8 years ago or something, Double Down had a bunch of crappy games, and they thought, hey, we'll put all these successful IGT games onto the Double Down platform. Was it Double Down they bought? I think it was Double Down. And they saw it as a marketing tool, right? Really. We'll put our games there, and then they'll want to come and play those games for real, in Las Vegas or some other destination casino, right? But they were shocked to find that they weren't just generating marketing; they were actually generating revenue. And so, to this day, I think it makes a good third or maybe a half of IGT's revenues as social casino. People paying real money to buy fake money to win and lose. It's just crazy. Who would have thought?
Big Fish had took over half the business. Big Fish Casino.
Yeah.
Then they stopped caring about mining with casual download.
Yeah, it's really competitive, and the last 5 years you've seen a lot of these social casinos just dive as the big boys are swallowing each other up and they're consolidating. But players do migrate a lot, right? When I play social slot games, for example, I'll run out of chips in one game and I'll go launch another game because I'm cheap. I never buy any chips. I know, but I'm not the target demographic. I know, but I'm not a web or even a minimum. But I'll go and launch another game and play through those chips, right? And it's weird. This one will be in denominations, like every bet's $1 million, right? This other one, every bet's like $10, right? And they kind of one up each other. But all they're doing is adding zeros to the fake money. It doesn't matter, right? But, I think there's enough room to support, 3 or 4. But which one will players investigate real money in and stay? That is the challenge, right? And so one of the challenges for us, if we're going to move into that slot space, is how do we can be competitive? These guys have at least 30 math models, right? They got 50 or 60 game skins. They're putting out a new slot game every 2 weeks. Are we going to be able to generate that content? Well, we have a history of user-generated content. Maybe we can figure out a way to allow users to help us create more slot games. So that's one of our ideas.
That's going to be tough.
Yeah.
This was kind of asked as far as your aspirations as to where this platform is going to go to. When I think about a casino and a casino experience, going into there's your different game options, there's people, there's the noise, which not necessarily a bad thing, but it's fun to hear slots going off over there, people playing. How much do you look at that experience as as part of what you do or don't want to come to with your game, and then as far as how you're going to service your player as almost like as a guest if you're a virtual casino.
Yeah, so as far as immersion goes, and to make it feel like more of a casino, obviously it's with the environmental art, right? It's with the animations of the player. Do they seem lifelike? Do they seem like a real person who's playing poker, right? Those emote animations, do they seem appropriate for what they're doing, right? And in VR, it's going to be all about what set dress is out there, right? And what's going on behind them, right? But it's also going to be sound, right? And we just added some additional sounds to our game by a professional sound guy. Came out of the casino industry, right? And so we do have some more ambient sounds there, more ambient music. But generally speaking, when people are playing poker, they want to maybe hear some cheers from maybe some onlookers, but they don't want to hear constant like slot machines ringing and so forth. Like, so you have to be a little bit careful with how much noise you put on because people are just going to turn it off. And the other reason is something I learned when I was making slot games. When it comes to sounds and presentation, you really want to associate that with a winning experience, right? If you're constantly inundated with effects and sounds and animations, then the players, sort of like a laugh track, players don't know when to get excited, right? So you have to have those moments of quiet. And so for poker, it's a patient man's game. You know, you might not win big for 20 hands, you know, but when you do, people want to hear it, right? So you're going to hear some cheers, right? You're going to hear some noise, and you can see some effects. We just added some new effects to the game when you have a winning experience, right? But you don't want to have that constantly.
There's a study that was out that said that most casual gamers use it as, what would you call it, a secondary experience. So they'll play the game while they're watching TV or something like that. So generally they'll have the sound turned down, they won't be paying attention, and that immersiveness will be lost anyway because it is that secondary activity.
It was diplomatic to say we're watching TV, not while at work.
Yes.
I think poker is the #1 game played on the toilet, right?
Is it?
Digital. I mean, I'm not trying to demographics.
Well, we are well past 8 o'clock. We have a last question online. Or anyone else want to give a wrap up?
And we'll hang out a little afterwards if you guys want to talk. As I said, we are hiring. If you're an artist and you're looking for work, you can talk to Robert. You can also talk to Toujours. She's over there with the beret. Her fine art is dressed throughout this game. Good person to talk to. And Yan Fang, if you're an engineer, talk to him. Get him your resume. We're actively hiring for that role too. And if you are interested in testing, you can come talk to me.
Cool. Thank you, Tim.
Oh,
Get in the fight, soldier. BC spotted. She got her there.
Let's get him, mate. Target red Bravo 295. Keep a low profile. First one to spot the enemy gets a beer. Get in there and blow him away. Scratch one of the bastards. Bloody VC, over there. Weapons dry, we're clear.
Thank you for your interest in the Georgia Game Developers Association's Patreon campaign. The Georgia Game Developers Association is a nonprofit that focuses on educating both game developers and fans on what is involved in making great games. For years we have put on live events to do just that, attracting some of the greatest thinkers in game development to share their secrets. Recently, we began our live streaming channel on Mixer to expand our ability to reach those developers and gamers far beyond our state. We have seen some initial success, but we are also hearing a lot of requests for more. More workshops, more in-depth interviews, more first looks at indie games, more giveaways, and more great streams. Your support will allow us to do just that. Even at starting levels, we both recognize your support and seek your input on what to stream. At higher levels, you can actually help shape our content, gaining priority access to our speakers, the chance to share announcements, and, at the highest level, running ads and promotions for all our viewers to see. So join now to get the inside scoop on game development and to help shape one of the best game dev channels on the net.